Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this entire week's theme of dude, you gotta check this song out. Looking at a track from Dying Wish. The song we're looking at is Path to Your Grave, and I can't say that I've ever heard this group before, so we're in for something new, but at the same time, based on the thumbnail and the album, not the album art, the logo of the band, I'm gonna wager we're definitely in the metal realm somewhere. Let's dive in, see what Dying Wish is bringing to the table today. Wasting zero time getting into this. Getting some really strong Rhea Ripley vibes. Definitely a metalcore track. Massive tempo shift. Yeah, nice little way of introducing this energy. The shift to the ride, the bell of the ride symbol on that third punctuation. Ooh. I wasn't expecting clean vocals. The guitars are very bright, not focused on the low end anymore. Even the harmony of the chord progression is much lighter. Heavy sense of levity in this chorus. Is it a chorus? Massive bridge. Gnarly vocals too, really pushing up into the nasal cavity there. Very different from the throaty, large-bodied harshes we had at the beginning of the track. I honestly thought we were just going to end the song on that, but it has introduced us to an outro breakdown. Alright. Song has a little bit of everything as far as metalcore goes. We have driving riffs, we have blast beats, we have breakdowns, we have melodic choruses with strong chord progression under them. It's a little bit of everything. And so I found that while it typically isn't my cup of tea, it's a little bit too far into the classic side of metalcore, more so than melodic metalcore. It had just enough elements in it that kept me coming back to it. And it does make me want to check out more from Dying Wish. I think I would definitely need a little bit less of the heaviness. Maybe they don't do that too often, but I like the chorus. Very well produced, beautiful melody line, nice switch of the guitar tones, a real strong understanding of what goes into flipping that sort of weight and presenting a bit of levity within the track. Now, going back to the intro, the song wastes no time. It dives right into full speed ahead. We got some crazy drums, we got some screaming or some growling going on. The guitars come in with a really fast riff as well. This is one of the more memorable riffs of the song, and features a little bit of pedal tone in order to create these moments between more melodic movement. But for the most part has these really syncopated ideas that keep bouncing back and forth between something a bit more melodic and putting pedal tones between any notes that would normally have just been held out in order to create the fact that almost everything in there is, I think, a 16th note instead of changing up the rhythm between each note. And just like right off the bat, full energy from everybody. We don't really let that up for a while either. What I thought was the chorus wasn't, and I'm not quite sure what that second section was. We kind of did a bit of a halftime feel, but it wasn't a breakdown, right? And so I don't really know how to classify that, so I'm just going to call it the B section, where we started was our A section. I'm not giving them names, we're just going to give them letters because I'm kind of confused about all this. So we go A, B, A. We come back to that opening idea, the driving energy, all that stuff. And then we come to the C, which generally, when we label things with letters, is the bridge. But here the C is our chorus. And the reason I'm going to call this chorus is because this is the part where the clean vocals come in and we revisit it at the end. Songs like to end on choruses. I'm just going to go with that. The chorus provides, as I mentioned, quite a bit of levity against everything else, whereas the A and B sections were predominantly focused on a bass-heavy production, driving energy in the riffs, driving drum work, lots of energy from the drums in general, just lots of notes coming out of them, and of course the growling from the vocalist providing more of a compressed texture that kind of envelops everything else in the track, given the prominence of the vocals in the mix. The chorus lightens all of that up. Most of that bass heavy emphasis is gone. The guitars are now more focused production wise on treble. There's also a brightness to the chords. The musicality of the notes chosen introduce levity. It doesn't have this weightiness, this bassiness, this gravity to it anymore. It feels like gravity has been halved. I'm not floating away from the ground, but it certainly is not as exerting to simply walk anymore. I suppose in a way you can think of the chorus as like moonwalking, where you can easily just like jump really high and like slowly descend back down. Not weightlessness, just levity. The vocals are very clean here. There's a beautiful element to the way that she delivers these vocals. They're very full-bodied, but also reserved, if that makes any sense. It doesn't feel like she's belting them out, but there's a ton of volume and presence to them, which may be a production thing. It may be that she's singing a bit more quieter, maybe with a little bit of etherealness to it, but the producer has bumped everything up and made it feel like a very full projected sound. That's what it sounds like to me. Anyways, it carries the effortlessness and the lightness of that vocal delivery while also carrying the song and being in that present, having the vocals be the spotlight rather than be drowned out by the instrumentation, which is where the production comes in and boosting that sound up a little bit. The drums lighten up a little bit, and like I mentioned, the guitars are just giving us chords and the bass is giving us root tones. It's a typical lighter chorus for metalcore, but it's quite efficient at what it does, and given the brutality that exists before it, is a welcome moment for me to have a moment to catch my breath. From here, we return back into, oh no, we go to a halftime feel, don't we? And then that goes to the breakdown. So this takes us to our D section, the first breakdown. I'm not a fan of breakdowns. I've said this in the past. Nothing new here. It's a halftime feel with less notes and more emphasis on those notes. High accent. I don't really know that it works here. I don't know if it's a production thing or a composition thing. Breakdowns are something, like I just mentioned, I'm not a big fan of, so I don't really understand how they work. I know there are some breakdowns where I just get like this filthy face. I'm like, oh god, that is just wow. But this one doesn't really give that to me. It certainly has all the markings that I believe a breakdown should have. As I mentioned, halftime feel, less hits from everybody, lots of silence, but those hits that are done have heavy accent to them. It just never really comes across as that sort of meaty breakdown that I expect from the genre, and I don't know why. Maybe that's intentional, though, because I do think that the end breakdown kind of pushes more in that direction, and maybe they did this for a bit of contrast, especially coming out of their lightest moment. They didn't want to swing to the extreme opposite side, while also allowing the song to have room to go further later on in the song. For all I know, there's also a lyrical thing that leans into that there as well. Heaviness, but not brutality. I don't know. From here, we also have a blast beat section, which I thought was pretty cool. The blast beats shifted to, well, it wasn't blast beats. It was more like alternating snare and bass stuff that you'd get from black metal, 16th notes. That went to blast beats on the snare. So that was pretty cool. I thought that was a neat little transition. And we had this cool little riff coming out of the guitars, all 16th notes, but always moving. And I don't remember there being a heavy emphasis on pedal tones either. It was a neat little idea. I thought it worked well at creating this swirling vortex energy. It just feels like everything's moving and there's no end in sight. It's just this brutal cycle of intensity. And the vocals in here just really leaned into that with, as I mentioned, a bit more of a nasally type of vocal harsh that to me feels more in line with black metal than any of the metalcore harshes we heard throughout the rest of the track. And I found that to be a really nice way of the vocalist showcasing a little bit of their vocal dexterity. And then from here we hit the chorus and then the outro, which that outro was bonkers because I legitimately thought we had this slowing down, almost halftime, but not. It almost feels like we went for quarter note triplets and then also dropped the tempo just a hair bit, so it feels like a halftime, but we're not quite there. It just feels like we've slowed down a ton, and we're hitting these notes slower, there's more space between them, and I really figured the song was just going to stop at one of these notes, just like a final note, hit the root note of the chord progression of the first chord in the chord progression. So we resolve to this and then maybe put like some extra reverb on the bass kick or the bass guitar and get this really resonant boom underneath all of it. Just really give it that finality. And they didn't do that. They turned this slow descent into a more brutal breakdown and put some layered harshes in here, some of the more nasally harshes against some of the more throatier growls to get this nice full layered harsh. And even having contrast in that, some syllables are just one style, some syllables are both, creating this fluctuation between that vocal timbre. And the whole band is just grinding to a halt with these massive hits. It is a rather gnarly way to end the track, and one that, at least for me, as I mentioned, was a bit unexpected too, which was neat. That's the kind of thing that I think you have to do as somebody coming in. I don't know how old Dying Wish is. Maybe this is like their 10th album and they've been here since the beginning. I don't know. But at least for me, when I check out metalcore bands, being that it's like the most popular style of, this is basically pop metal, right? That's how I always envision metalcore. I don't say that with any shade. I grew up on metalcore. I discovered metalcore because it was the popular kind of metal, right? I didn't listen to metal. I didn't listen to heavy metal. I had a little bit of new metal because, the radio pushed bands like Slipknot and Korn and stuff. But I got into metalcore because it was the forward-facing genre of metal. And I think a lot of people did too, and I think that's why metalcore just has so many bands out. But on the flip side, there's also a lot of homogeneity to metalcore. As I mentioned, even the vocals in here, I said she goes back to a standard metalcore style of vocals, and I mentioned the chorus being very standard for the genre as well. It is a genre that does have some experimentation on the fringes, but there's a lot of iterative writing within the core sound of metalcore. And this is typical for any genre that gets popular. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, and as I've mentioned in the past, iteration is integral to the growth of anything, both art and popularity. I mean, if you want more people to come into your art form, it needs to be palatable. In order to be palatable, it needs to have the rough edges sanded off, and iteration is the easiest way to do that. So, but at the same time, you also have to do just enough to stand out. And I think that ending caught me off guard, which is important. You want that to be a part of your song. Almost everything in here, I'm like, okay, I could see a lot of bands doing something like this. Maybe not identical, but similar-ish. And then that ending catches me off guard. I'm like, okay, Dying Wish does something different in the genre. And maybe they don't, but I just don't listen to enough of it nowadays to hear that this is a standard ending. There's also the oddity of the structure that goes into this. The basically having 3 heavy sections before we hit the chorus. That was interesting too. It completely changed up the way I would name the sections of this track. So there are a lot of cool things going on, and as I mentioned earlier, even though this isn't something I would normally listen to, it's a bit heavier for my tastes. It's still something that I'm interested in, and since this just came out, well, 6 months ago, it's 2023, I'm very inclined to check out the album. The album came out November 3rd, so it is a bit of a newer one. Yeah, I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to hit some lyrics right here, and then we're going to wrap this video up. Alright, and the lyrics are very straightforward. It's a song about being in a toxic relationship. Doesn't necessarily need to be romantic. I don't think any of the lines necessarily point towards anything, but it is somebody who has been abused by someone else, and a lot of the lines are angsty. There's a lot of anger put towards this other person for the abuse they put them through, but there's also a lot of strength and power in the lyrics as this person has improved themselves and become somebody that they didn't think they could now that they've left this other person. There's also a little bit of, as I said, angst. There are some lines in here about this other person dying, about torturing them. Yeah, the animosity is real, and based on some of the lines about abuse and just all sorts of pain that they have accumulated over the years, the trauma itself, it's probably warranted to have that sort of animosity towards this person. But at one point it says, a defiance you'll take to your grave. I could have let your faults kill me, but I found strength in spite. The hell that hides inside my mind no longer burns in fear of you. My healing forms in twisted ways. I welcome the pain. Don't mistake my acceptance for forgiveness. I have grown numb to your memory. I really like that ending because it says, even of all the things you've done to me, right? And there's definitely some things that I want to hurt you for. I don't even really think about you anymore. I don't really have feelings about you when I think about you. You're just this concept in my memory, and I've grown numb to you. I really like that because, I think there's definitely an element of vengeance that's easy to latch onto, especially just having gotten free from a terrible situation like this and just really wanting the worst for this other person. But despite a lot of the animosity in the music and in the lyrics, the path forward is not necessarily forgiveness, as she says, my acceptance. Don't mistake my acceptance for forgiveness, but to healing is to move on, to forget about it entirely. Don't allow them to control you anymore. If every thought of them throws you into a blind rage, they still have control over you. And I know that is easier said than done to just get over something like this, but I like how that line is in here. It shows a maturity to all of this that, at least to me, shows that many of the elements of violence and torture and death that's wished upon this other person is a heightened element and is understood to be a heightened element, not something to take too seriously, but also I kind of do feel that way at times. That kind of vibe. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's a line towards the end that says, I've turned my scars into pride. My story ends with bravery, right? I'm not going to let you define who I am. And I've become better and stronger because of what happened to me. That's it. My story is what goes forward, not what happened to me in the past. But I don't ignore that because that is why I am who I am today. And yeah, like I said, it's an angry track. But that fits with the lyrics, and there's a really strong sense of synergy between the lyrics and the vocals, and even having the lyrics and the music, and even having that bit of levity in the chorus, I think talks about just how positive the message is in here. It's about pushing forward, it's about healing, it's about being better. Yeah, there's anger in here. Yeah, you can really dig into that on the metal side. But when we get to that chorus, it talks about being better. It talks about having a weight lifted off your shoulder. So I think a lot of it works together in that realm, and it does a good job of balancing the different emotions present in both the music and the lyrics in a way that's rather cohesive. This is definitely one of those songs where metal just being angry, or at least that's how it sounds to me most of the time, works really well in tandem with the lyrics. Those are my thoughts on Dying Wishes, Path to Your Grave. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you just have your own thoughts, opinions, or perspectives about this track. Put all that stuff down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for this group. There is a bonus video today, a third one that we don't typically do, but there's a brand new track from Seven Spires I wanted to check out. That's coming up next at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard... No, yeah, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC if you're interested. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. EST, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we're going to check out 2 albums. It's going to be a choose your own adventure deal. They're both going live at the same time. I don't remember. One's Cardiacs, and I think the other one is Metal. I don't remember. But yeah, so you have your choice there. Or watch them both. Or stagger them and watch one tomorrow and one Sunday. I don't know. It's to make up because I didn't put one out last week since my kid was sick. And then Sunday we'll have the live stream as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.